The cost of living has dominated much of the discussion in Ottawa since Parliament's return, and it is against this backdrop that the Canadian Housing and Renewal Association released their blueprint for housing today. Now, this is a document the association brought to Parliament Hill as they spoke to MPs about the gaps in Canada's housing plan and the critical need for housing right across the country. Ray Sullivan is the executive director of the CHRA. He joins us right now. Mr. Sullivan, you come to Parliament Hill at a time when our leaders are debating housing affordability. What do you make of that debate? Does that give you encouragement that the issues you're bringing to politicians is currently top of mind?
Yeah, and this is what's fantastic about the timing right now. And never in my career of 20 plus years in affordable housing have I seen it reach to the top of the agenda on Parliament Hill the way it has. So we've brought together affordable housing experts from across the country, over 50 folks, to come and talk to members of Parliament about what's on their mind too, right? Which is that more and more people across Canada are struggling to find a home and keep a home that they can afford.
Get a home, keep a home. But I suspect that there's a difference here that you're talking about between creating housing stock that people can actually afford and buy versus the other piece of this, which is the basic need of getting safe and secure homes for people who really are just making ends meet.
Yeah, but look, there's one housing market, whether you're talking about expensive market-priced homes for sale or whether you're talking about affordable and below-market rental housing. And what happens on one end of the spectrum affects the other as well. The new census data that was just released last week showing that there's been a drop for the first time in decades in the rate of ownership of housing in Canada, particularly among folks 35 years and under. What does that mean? It means more folks are staying in the rental market, putting more pressure on rents, driving up the cost of housing for people for whom that is their only option left.
Now, the government did release a $10 billion housing strategy 5 years ago. How would you assess that strategy? Where has it gone right? Where are the shortfalls still, do you think?
Yeah, the National Housing Strategy, you say, is 5 years old now. And there are some cracks, there are some gaps, and there are households, there are folks who are falling into those cracks. And we're here to talk to folks about filling in those gaps. And one of the biggest gaps, one of the missing pieces of the National Housing Strategy is the lack of a specific urban, rural, and northern Indigenous housing strategy. And this is where some of the greatest need is. Housing outcomes for Indigenous renters are much worse than for renters in general. 1 out of every 4 renter from an Aboriginal community is in core housing need. There's other gaps in the National Housing Strategy. It ignores the possibility of nonprofit acquisition of existing rental properties. These are gaps that need to be filled. We're happy that government is listening to us. We're happy that they're welcoming us to the table and working with them to make these improvements.
So talk to us a bit more about that. What exactly can political leaders do to fill in the gaps that you're addressing here?
Yeah, and this is about filling those gaps by addressing what has changed since 2017. We're talking about a national housing strategy that was created at a time of historically low inflation, of stable prices. All of that has shifted. The response to the private sector rental market has shifted. The response in the nonprofit sector, where CHRA represents members, has shifted. Government needs to shift as well.
Housing is such a basic need. Can you talk to us, though, about what secure housing, or from perhaps the other vantage point, housing and security, what kind of future do those kind of policies create?
And this is the key, and this is why we've created a blueprint. And every good home starts with a blueprint plan. We've created a blueprint for the Government of Canada to address those needs, because housing is at that foundation. And the right to housing, which is now recognized in legislation, is that core and an access point for all of the other rights and comforts that folks enjoy. It has to start with housing.
So what is your hope coming out of today's meetings?
My hope, and we're already seeing it from the round of meetings we had with dozens of members of Parliament this morning, is we're seeing a positive response. And we're seeing a positive response from all parties in the House of Commons. And our hope is that that dialogue continues. Our experts are here, again, from across the country to work with members of Parliament, to work with staff, to work with Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation to fill those gaps, because we have to. It is urgent. The housing crisis has touched all of us, our family members, our neighbors, and we cannot delay.
Ray Sullivan, really appreciate the time today. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Michael.